What's up, guys? This is Justin. I am very excited to bring you my review of the Spyderco Civilian. This is one of my favorite knives in my collection, and it has been for a long time. I think I've had this knife now for probably 7 or 8 years. Yeah, I've always really liked this knife. It is not in any way the most practical knife that I have or in my collection. It's pretty expensive. You have to be careful with it, but I think it is just one of the coolest knives that I've honestly ever seen. So very excited to bring this review to you, and yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So in terms of blade steel, this is VG10. See there, Spyderco VG10. This is the first knife I've reviewed in VG10. I've used knives that are in VG10 before. It's a fine steel, very, very much stainless. Edge retention is not great, but it's pretty easy to sharpen. Spyderco still makes their delicas in VG10. I think they're Enduras, some of their other FRN models. It's a good steel. I mean, it's nothing spectacular, so I give it a score of a 6. In terms of clip, this one has a very unique clip. Even more so, I'd say, than the Tough that I just reviewed. You can see here it's similar to that, and then it has the 3 screws here that attach it to the body. However, it's like a kind of like a half circle, half moon clip. I don't even know how to describe it. And then it's cantered toward the lock bar, I guess, the cutout. It's cantered that way to make it easier to carry, because this is a very large knife. But yeah, I've carried this many times. The clip is well designed. It's very tight against the body here. Very, very tight. It's it's easy to get in the pants. Good amount of ramp. Good amount of area under the clip. If you wanted to carry it in jeans, which I would recommend if you're going to carry this. It is I don't know if I think it's a painted clip, so it will show wear marks more readily. But yeah, overall a nice clip. Very unique, and it can be carried either in the tip up or tip down configuration, right-handed only. So I gave the clip a score of a 7 for this model. In terms of lock type, this is a back lock. You can see the cutout here for the lock, so it just disengages by pushing that down. Pretty simple, similar to the Buck 110. It's just the area where you press the lock down to release it is more in the middle of the knife as opposed to at the back for the Buck. Materials on this guy, I gave a score of 7. The handle is G10, and then it has a steel liner on one side. The screws are T6 here and T8 here, or excuse me, T10 up here. Steel back spacer, steel lock bar. So, nothing fancy, but they're nice enough materials. So I think a score of 7 is very fair for this knife. In terms of size, as I mentioned, this is a very big knife. So I'll put the Manix on top, so you can see here how long it is. The Manix is taller, but the Civilian is probably 1.5 inches longer overall. And then the Buck 110 here on the bottom. So you can see here again, the Buck is a long knife itself, and the Civilian even out sizes it, I guess, by almost 1/2 inch, I'd say. So yeah, it's a very long knife. In terms of weight, I don't know what the exact weight on this would be. I would say around 3.5, maybe 4 ounces, but it's not a super heavy knife. And I think that's aided by the fact that it only has the steel liner on one side. So, yeah, it's pretty easy to carry in the pocket. In terms of action, I gave this a score of 7. This was a little bit difficult to rate. These backlocks, Spyderco does make a nice backlock. It's stiff enough, but not too stiff. And then it has a nice, reassuring click. This is probably the best backlock I've handled out of any Spyderco model, maybe out of any backlock. But yeah, the action is pretty good. It's smooth enough. It's not, you can't Spidey flick it or anything like that, but for what it is, it's a good action. So I think a score of 7 is fair for that. In terms of hardware, I did mention this a little bit. in the materials, but this is a T10. These are unfortunately T6s, which is pretty small. I would have liked to have seen those bumped to like a T8, but this is also not a knife that I would recommend trying to disassemble. So maybe screw size in this case is irrelevant. This just isn't something that you're going to carry and use a lot. You know, you may carry it a lot, but I don't see where you would use it a lot, simply because of the style of blade here. I mean, you can see this reverse S serrated blade. So yeah, you know, I knocked the hardware down a few points because of the T6s, and then also considering trying to disassemble this thing with it being a backlock is going to be way more difficult than, you know, say like a PM2 or something. I've tried disassembling a backlock once, and that was on a black matriarch with the wave feature. Did not go very well. I cut my thumb pretty badly on that knife. So, you know, be warned. If you want to try to take it apart, you know, I just put that warning out to you. In terms of price, this one, when I bought this civilian, I think I paid around $210, $205, $210. I just checked Blade HQ's website, and they're currently at $232, but they're very hard to find. I did email Spyderco a few months back, and they said they're just having difficulties getting materials, getting supplies. So, you know, they haven't discontinued the model, but, you know, in terms of price, I give it a score of an 8. I think it is rather expensive, but I mean, if you look at this blade, and this is something I haven't really talked about much, but if you look at this blade, I mean, this is expertly ground. I mean, the angle here behind the serration is just very, very even on both sides. Just very well done. The serration is extremely sharp. This tip is extremely sharp, and it's just a wicked looking knife. It's probably my favorite feature of this knife. So yeah, price is high, but I think for what you're getting, it's very reasonable. Then you have nice materials, and you know, the stainless steel, the G10, good action, Spyderco, you know, well made. It is a Japan Spyderco, so not quite to the same level as a Taichung Spyderco, Taichung, Taiwan, but still very, very nice. And then in terms of quality, I gave this a score of a 9. I think it's a very well made knife. The grind on the reverse S is amazing. The back lock here, I mean, there's not really much space at all between the scales and the lock. I mean, you can see it's hardly discernible where the back spacer ends and the scale begins. So it's just really, really well made. Nice clip. Again, I've had this knife for probably 8 years or more and never had any issues with it. I've carried it quite a bit. So yeah, and let me just give you guys another look at this blade. I'll try to get a little closer to the camera. You can see here, it's just a really wicked knife, wicked edge. Be very, very careful when you handle this. And actually, just to give a little bit of background on this knife, Spyderco developed this for self-defense. I think it was for drug enforcement agency agents, for people who couldn't carry a handgun but wanted something for self-defense. They developed this knife for those folks, and that's why it has this reverse S. The intention being that if, you know, something did happen, they were assaulted or something, they could fight back, but they wouldn't do fatal harm to their assailant, because this is going to be more effective at ripping anything than puncturing, except for the tip here, but it's not going to puncture super deep because of the reverse S style. So yeah, just a little bit of background on that. And they do actually put in the material when you purchase the knife that they don't recommend using this for everyday carry, but I do carry it. I have in areas that are, you know, a little on the shady side, and it's good for self-defense. It gives you confidence, but, you know, in those situations, is using a knife the best response? Maybe not for the average person. So anyway, in terms of competition, there's not really much for this knife. Spyderco makes a matriarch, which is a smaller version of this with FRN scales. You can check that out. It's about half the price of this. Also has the back lock, same steel. I know Cold Steel makes a Tiger Claw, and then they make another one that I can't remember the name of. But it also has an S-style blade with serrations. So if you want to check that one out, I think it's also about half the price. But, you know, again, the materials aren't quite to the same level as this. So, yeah, anyway, in terms of total score, the Civilian got a 51, which, you know, for what it is pretty good. This isn't something you're going to carry and use, but it's definitely something you can carry and enjoy. And like I said, it's definitely one of my favorite knives in my collection. So thanks a lot, guys, for watching. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And yeah, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Leave me a like, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good night. See ya.